gosh, watching Shasta's Journey, and my name is Shasta Garcia, and I'm your host. This show is all about my path to a purpose, and along the way, I get to meet so many incredible people with stories that can teach, heal, or inspire one of you. And on this episode, I have a young man named Justin Sharp, and we are going to cover 17 years worth of amazingness of what God is doing and just how faithful He is. And we're just going to take a look at homeschooling with a purpose, being an Eagle Scout, being involved in performance arts, and just so much more. So excited to introduce Justin. I actually interviewed him on a previous talk show that I hosted called Shasta's Teen Journal, which was, I don't know, a few years ago. And it was not faith-based whatsoever, so it was more, well, actually, that episode was faith-based. But now this, you can actually just, elaborate, just go for it, So I'm really excited about that, so just go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I'm Justin. I live in Mountain Ranch. I've been homeschooled pretty much all of my schooling career. I've been an Eagle Scout. I've been a Boy Scout since I was 12. I just recently got my Eagle Scout, and some things that I enjoy doing are theater and writing and going to church.
Perfect. It sounds like a well-rounded personality and character. I think it's really, really great. So you started your whole life in a Christian family. And so you don't necessarily think that you have a testimony, but how would you describe how you came about your faith to the viewers?
Well, it's always been kind of hard because usually when people talk about having a testimony, they have their story about how they came to Christ or how they accepted Christ. But for me, being a Christian from the cradle, because in our church we get baptized while we're still a baby, there was never really a time where I came to Christ as much as Christ has always been with me. I was thinking about it the other day, and I described it in that I have always known who my mother was, who my father was, and who God was. There was never a time that I learned, oh, this is Dad and He's my dad. It was always, this is God and He's my God, and He's always been with me and He's always been there for me.
Has there ever been any moments of doubt or uncertainty throughout your journey of life when it comes to your faith?
There was a moment when I was on our missions trip that we were talking about on our last time, where my leader, his name was Josh, he was talking to me a little bit, and he's like, when you're going out into the world, there will be people who will sort of attack you about your faith, and so just as a sort of little faith exercise, I'm going to pretend like I'm one of those people, and I'm going to sort of try and shoot you down on a faith on the sort of area of faith. And he went through a lot of what people hear, what they think about when someone's attacking someone in faith. You can't really prove it. And when I was talking to him, it was hard because I didn't know how to counter all of the things, or at the time, how to prove the existence of God, or because I was sort of off balance a little bit, I didn't remember all the things that I had learned. And I sort of just had to accept that part of faith is believing things in the face of adversity and believing things when you can't always prove them. And then all of his arguments seemed sort of pointless, because if I could prove it to him, then it wouldn't be faith.
Definitely. I completely know what you mean by that. From that experience of just practicing what it would be like if somebody was persecuting you when it comes to your faith, have you experienced that in real life mode, out in the ministry or just in your everyday life?
People these days are all about being really accepting, and part of that is they sort of attack people who aren't accepting, but if people really believe that, oftentimes they will just be sort of accepting of everything, and not always in the way of they approve of it, but they just don't challenge it. So personally, thank the Lord, I haven't really been attacked in that way that he was trying to simulate, but it will probably come around at some point, but thankfully it hasn't yet.
Seriously. Well, I know that you are a homeschooler, and I know with that comes a whole bunch of stereotypes. I went on homeschool, and I was afraid to be associated with the stereotypes of being a homeschooler. Socially awkward and so many different things, which aren't true. And so how would you describe to people what it's like to homeschool with a purpose?
So part of homeschooling, of course, is being schooled at home, kind of in the name. But the nice thing about for me when I was homeschooling is my mom actually had her teaching credential. And so she knew everything there was to know about teaching. And so I never really felt like I was missing the school aspect of school in homeschooling because I always had my mom there to teach me. But the nice thing about the homeschooling is it made everything a lot more versatile. Like we got to, and maybe not us personally as kids because we still had deadlines that mom's like, if you don't have your homework turned in by this time, then you don't get to go over to your friend's house or something. But the nice thing about it was our mom could sort of mold everything that we were learning. So it wasn't like we were falling behind because we didn't understand the concept in math and it had already moved on, because the thing moved at our own pace. And so it was really nice in that way because we would never really fall behind because everything was sort of focused on us. Now, in my later years of homeschooling, what we did for a long time was we would meet with other families who were homeschooling once a week, and that was when we would sort of get curriculum delivered to us. It's kind of nice. What we were doing more was a charter school that worked similar to homeschooling.
Same here.
So there was a lot of the freedom, but there was a lot of the freedom of homeschooling, but also there was the sort of structure of having someone that you had to report to on a weekly basis. But it was also sort of fill in the gaps. And the nice thing was we got to pick a lot of the extracurricular activities that we did, but it wasn't as much drawing from a limited pool as here is 50 people in the area that you can take an extracurricular activity with, go. And so my sister does horse riding, and we did soccer for a while, and we do a lot of 4-H and, like I said, scouts, and it's kind of nice because not being in that regular routine of school, it's easier to change plans at the drop of a hat and go on a Boy Scout camping trip and not have to worry so much as, I have to see my teacher on the day after I get back from school, from the camping trip. So I have to have everything in line. And it's easier to sort of let things go and do what's more important instead of just what is being pushed on you by the school system.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever experienced public school, though?
When I was very young, so from preschool into the second half of second grade, I'm pretty sure, I was in the public school system. And in kindergarten, that was great because my teacher was awesome and I learned so much, and because I was sort of outgoing and very participatory and always wanted to answer questions and stuff like that, I did really well in the class. It was more when I got into first grade and the first half of second grade that I started to become a little bit more troublesome. Like, I guess, like you were saying about the stereotypical homeschooler, I was becoming the stereotypical
Public schooler.
well, maybe not public schooler, but middle school young boy, and kind of, I think the proper term to use is deviant. And my family had always sort of remembered me as this charming, fun kid. And when I started going through first grade, I don't remember this, so
what happened in that little short period of time?
I guess so, but my family says that I was like rude and violent, and I'm like, I don't remember any of that. She's like, trust me, you were. And then when the summer came, they said it only took a couple weeks and you were back to your normal, good-hearted self. And I'm like, interesting. And then when I got back to school, I started to turn back. And I believe the breaking point when my mom decided that she was going to pull me out and start homeschooling me was our family was going on a trip to Iceland, the sort of thing that at a drop of a hat the school system doesn't really approve of. And it turned out that on our trip, I was going to miss so many days that I would be considered truant. Mm-hmm. And my mom said, you know, he can work on stuff. And they said, it doesn't really matter. And Mom's like, well, I guess I have my teaching credentials, so I guess I'll just homeschool them. And that, and her getting to be in charge of me and be around me all the time and see sort of times when I was erring a little bit off and to be able to sort of nudge me back onto the proper path, it helped me a lot. And like I was talking about before, the whole knowing me and changing the curriculum to suit my better purposes and interests, it's worked out really well.
Yeah, you've been super blessed to have the parents that you have. I mean, they support you like no other, and they just want what's best for you, and it's just incredible. How do you think growing up with very faithful parents that really just kind of mold a character that we should be has helped just mold you into the man you are today?
The interesting thing about growing up with parents who are Christians and who have a God that they are answering to is the fact that they have someone they are answering to, and it's not just the government or the Social Security people who they could sort of, sweep all the dirt under the rug when they come around to check things. But the fact that they have someone to answer to who is always watching and really knows everything sort of helps them to know that there is a higher power that can be appealed to. It's sort of like when Thomas Jefferson was complaining to the King of England about the way the colonists were being treated, but in doing so, he appealed to God. And it wasn't just like, so King, it'd be nice if you treated us better and please do that. Because if he just said that, the king's like, well, I'm the king, I can do whatever I want. But if he's like, God requires that you treat us in a better way, it sort of is like, well, I'm the king, but God is God. And so I can't really be abusive in that way. So it was really nice to have God there to appeal to when I maybe felt like my parents were not really being the best. That didn't really happen very often, though, thankfully.
Not being fair. Maybe that's like a better word. You know what I really love? I really loved that Thomas Jefferson reference. I mean, it just shows you how smart he is. But not only is he smart, though, he's also super talented in performance arts, which I really want to talk about because I knew a little bit about that, but it's just so intriguing because I loved performance arts and I wish I had more time to do it, but I loved it. And so I just kind of love to hear what got you into that and just how you stay motivated and how you do that with everything else that you do. I mean, let's talk about time management over here.
Oh, time management.
Time management.
One of the problems, honestly, with being homeschooling and the whole freedom aspect of it is it's really easy to get yourself double booked and overworked.
You've got me feeling guilty over here.
It's fine though. I'm doing pretty good on my schoolwork this week. Where to start with the whole performance arts and stuff like that? Probably my earliest memory of performing was like being 4 or 5 and memorizing the chorus to "Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog" and just singing that for my family. And part of the being homeschooled and not really being around other kids my age is when I was performing at a very young age, there wasn't so much a fear about judgment and other people being like, oh, that kid, he's just crazy and he's just like wanting attention. But the people I was around and that I was performing for were always like really interested, like, oh, Justin, you memorized a song? Please let me hear. I'd be so excited and happy to hear that. And so growing up, I may have been tempered a little bit on the whole, what will people think, and more, is this appropriate to do right now? But oftentimes when it is okay for me to let loose a little bit and have some fun, I try not to worry about what other people would think as much of it and just have some fun. And it seems to work out pretty well. There's a couple different areas of, I guess, performance arts, as you call it, that I participate in. I do a lot of children's musical theater through Sea Stars, which is put on a couple plays, usually over at Bret Hart Theater. And that's sort of been my base for working off everything, but I also do a little bit of dance through Studio 4, so yeah, in this past year and in this year, I'm going to be the Nutcracker in the Studio 4 ballet.
How exciting! That's awesome. What type of performances have you been in? Oh, there's so many.
There's so many. Mostly, like I said, it's been musical theater through Sea Stars, but I also did a couple school plays when I was younger, like when I was first starting homeschooling. We did Pandora's Box, of all things, which...
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Like I said, school play.
Okay.
But I think I got to play Epimetheus or something like that in this a bunch of 7-year-olds running around doing a play about Greek mythology, and I think that's the first real play that I ever did, and I just had such a good time being a character. And growing up homeschooling, and especially living in the woods in Mountain Ranch, I didn't get as much free time to spend around other kids my age, so a lot of time I spent with DVDs. We didn't have cable, but with DVDs, I would watch them over and over and over again until I really started to soak them in and to memorize everything. And so a lot of, one of the things that I would do to entertain people sometimes is I would just start with a quote and just quote an entire scene from a movie.
Wow.
And I have to say, when I started working with Sea Stars, and I think I was 7 or 8, I was really young at the time, but I remember very vividly I memorized the entire show. I don't still remember it, but someone would be talking and they're like, I need a line, and little 7-year-old me would pop up and say, your line is this, and then you've got to walk over here and talk to the person, and then you've got to look angry. And I think on like a really long road trip, I was very bored, so I just recited the whole show to myself, and I'm like, I didn't know I could do that.
Well, that's incredible. I mean, that takes some serious talent. I think the last performance I did was, I was in Willy Wonka. I was Violet's mom. And you know when somebody tells you to break a leg? Yeah, I dislocated my knee, like before the show. Yeah. I like have bad before like show luck, like I don't even know. But and then I just not recently, but after that I directed Peter Pan.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But that wasn't with Sea Stars, it was with something. It's been too long. But that's besides the point. So underneath your name we actually have Eagle Scout, so I'd love to touch on that because that's another huge part of your life and another one of those hats that just keeps stacking up on top. So we have just a bunch to cover. So how did you get into becoming an Eagle Scout?
So the first part of becoming an Eagle Scout, of course, is becoming a scout. And a lot of my friends were in Scouts, but most of them had started when they were younger with Cub Scouts, and some good family friends. The Walker family had a son who was going into the Scouts, and the dad was like, "Oh, Justin, it's so much fun. You should do it." So for my 13th birthday, I spent at Camp Chawanakee out in the woods, and it was my first scouting experience, and I'm like, I have no idea what I am doing. And at the time, I knew sort of about Eagle Scout, but it was like the thing that was like way at the back of the Scout handbook and had all these requirements and all these big things to do. And it wasn't like, I'm going to be an Eagle Scout someday. It was more like, wouldn't it be funny if I became an Eagle Scout someday? That's never going to happen.
Well, it did.
But the Scouts has always been a very cool place for me to go because being homeschooled, I don't get to interact with people at school, except my sisters, who are sisters. They have their high points and they have their low points. So
I got 2 of my own.
So a lot of the times I got to interact with other people was through extracurricular activities, either at theater or at sports when I was doing soccer, or at Boy Scouts. And so a lot of the friends I have who are my age and are guys are friends that I only know from Boy Scouts. And so it was sort of nice to get to hang out with other people who were, I think the proper term is nerdy or weird like me. And it was also very cool because as I advanced through Scouts and some kids started to come in who were younger than me, it was a very cool time to sort of mentor them and to sort of see how they were, to see some flaws they might have had and to sort of try and help to steer them towards a better life, I guess. And so, yeah, Scouts has always been a very cool experience for me.
That's incredible. I think just throughout you talking, I mean, obviously you're super mature for 17 years old. I mean, compared to other 17-year-old people.
Not going to name names.
No, I mean, no names in general. I'm just talking about like just the age group just as a whole. But I think a big part of that would be because you were homeschooled. You know, you had different influences. I mean, for instance, you were around your parents and, around your mentors and all these extracurricular activities. And I mean, it did a great job for you. So, I mean, I think homeschool is a great thing. I know that I did it, and I think it's very important to recognize that people who homeschool, there's usually a purpose behind it, and there's a reason why they do it, and it usually just works out for them. I know I got to graduate early, and you're graduating pretty soon, correct? I mean, within the next...
Oh, yes. Yes, within the... technically on the normal schedule for people getting out of high school. I'm applying to different colleges right now, so last year at home.
Wow, that's exciting. So what exactly do you want to do after being in high school, homeschool?
So the theater thing is there, of course, because I love theater and I love acting and I love the performing arts very much. But the thing was, whenever I'd tell someone, I want to be an actor someday, they were like, "Aw, Justin, that's so cute. Don't quit your day job." So, and even though I know that sounds a little bit mean-spirited, the very thoughtful small child that I was at the time, was like, that's actually a good idea, because so many people try to break into the performing arts industry that it's always really good to have something to sort of fall back on. And aside from performing arts and a little bit of writing, I really love reading, so hoping to be a writer someday, but that's sort of similar. It's hard to be super successful as a writer or as an actor.
I think it all takes time.
That is very true, but in that time, you need to pay for food and live in a place. So I always thought, gotta have that extra little thing that I have to sort of fall back on, or to use as a catapult, or to have as my safety harness, so that if one thing doesn't work out, I'm not free falling in midair with nothing to catch me.
That'd be good.
So I started looking at different sciences, because it was hard for me to think, sort of like when someone says, "What's your favorite food?" and like only 3 things pop into your mind, and they're all really silly things like pizza and hamburgers, and I could only sort of think of art and science. I couldn't really think of like, what else is there? Law, maybe? I don't know.
Communications?
That is true. But I had always really loved sciences, because I was the kid in class who, whenever the teacher asks a question, I always look around to see if anyone else is going to answer it, and then I'm like, guess I can answer then. So because I had that, and because I was homeschooled and I had to ask questions of people, I've always had that sort of self-advocating spirit, and that if I have a question, I'm not going to be like, am I going to look dumb? I'm always like, I need to know the answer to this question so I can get better at this. So I'm going to ask it. And so because of that, I was always very good at sciences and good at math, and I've had a lot of great teachers in those too. But I remember when I was taking physical science in, what would it be? I think it would be like equivalent of my freshman year of high school, maybe the year before that. But the one thing that I really enjoyed in that whole big, broad science course was learning about the weather and web science.
Interesting.
And so my end of the year paper I did on different cloud types and what those different cloud types mean. And it always sort of stuck with me, like, weather is so cool, and especially like fluid dynamics, like how temperature and pressure affects the way things move and react. And
Weatherman. Okay, no, okay.
Well, it's kind of funny because usually when people say, "Oh, acting in meteorology, you would be a great weatherman."
No, I'm just saying that's a good fallback, right?
Well,
right.
And for a long time, I was like, "No, I don't want to be the stuffy old bald guy on TV
You don't
who's
have to
always
be
like."
that.
I know. And when I realized that, someone I think said to me, "Justin, I would always love to watch the weather just to see what weird thing you did on the weather." And I'm like,
You can be funny with it. You could do creative writing because you usually write your own speeches when you're a weatherman, and you could just make it so funny and just like, just get people so ready for their day.
And the thing is, I had never thought about it that way. So now I have to more seriously consider maybe being a weatherman because
I'd watch it. I don't even like watching the weather because I'm just like, don't tell me it's gonna rain. Like the other day, I went to the NFL football game, Raider game, and it was pouring, drenching. I was soaked for 5 hours sitting there at the football game. So no, I mean, I would still listen if you said that it's going to rain the whole entire time that you're at the game. But that's okay. Just make sure you're ready and prepared. We only actually have 3 minutes left, so I did want to cover recently, our whole community went through the Butte Fire, and it was devastating, completely devastating. And your family was actually impacted by this fire. And you guys are kind of like picking up the pieces right now and just kind of really molding your guys' life again. So can you just like touch on that just a little bit?
Sure. So the Butte Fire, like I said, I live in Mountain Ranch, so it really passed over everything. But fire is really weird in that it's really unpredictable. So if you look at the area where our house is, if here is our house and you drew a perfect circle around our house and then burned everything outside that circle, that's what it looked like. So miraculously, our house did survive. We had a fire like a year before, I think, that sort of cleared out all the brush behind our house and almost got our chicken coop. Thank goodness it didn't. But that sort of helped to like clear it out a little bit back there. And so it's a total miracle that we didn't lose everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Sadly, though, my dad is a cabinet maker and custom woodworker and kitchen designer and really jack of all trades and anything craftsman. He used to be a set designer, so he's really good at making things work in different ways. But he had this huge 2-story red barn. It looked like a barn, but it was really corrugated metal that he used as his wood shop. And it was full of wood and sawdust and paint and gasoline and welding equipment and a whole bunch of stuff that he had collected over the year. And
it
so
just went up in flames.
Well, actually, when it caught on the inside, it actually crushed and compacted like a soda can. So we're rebuilding that, and we just got the frame up with him, and I'm helping him. And it's really cool because I didn't get to help him with our house, and helping him build that, it's a really cool bonding experience.
Thank you so much, Justin, for being on the show, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please go share your story at shastasjourney.com and look us up on Facebook, and we look forward to many more episodes with you guys. And have a blessed day, guys.